Mantra for the day. As a general rule, go towards things, unless it's a charging rhino. Hi, and welcome to Seat Meets Table, the podcast that brings people together. I am your host, Sam O'Hara-Childs, and in the seat today is comic artist Kitty McEwan. If you enjoy this interview, consider joining our Patreon for incredible bonus content, which is kind of like this, but much more outrageous and very funny. Here's a quick sample.
She thrust these flowers in my face, like, spoil the missus. I was like, well, I haven't got a missus. If you had a missus, buy them flowers. Or maybe manifest, buy the flowers first, then get the missus.
Well, yeah, again, like emergent phenomena, acquire flowers and then missus just appears.
On cue. I'm your missus.
Yeah, thanks for these.
Kiss those carnations.
The link's below. On with the interview. Hi Kitty, how are you doing today?
Doing good.
Excellent. What is the heart of your passion, if you had to define it?
Ooh. Okay. This is like really down to the root kind of question.
I know.
I think I'll go with the first thing that came to mind. First thing is I've always been someone who's kind of told stories or come up with stories or had a story in mind for something.
From a young age?
Yeah.
Right.
So as a kid, I'd often, I played a lot of, play pretend style games with my little brother and my friends. I did a lot of things where I would, come up with characters for different things. I came up with a lot of my own characters, in my own little sketchbooks and that sort of thing as well. And I always made, mini backstories and imagined what they'd be doing.
So the lore as well.
Yeah, exactly. I had, I think I still have it hidden away somewhere, but I had this little notebook that was my storybook.
Right.
And I didn't properly know how to write at that point, but I knew what writing was.
The stories were there, even if the language wasn't.
Yeah, it was very when you see in a cartoon, squiggles on a page, kind of background writing. It was a full book of that, but for a while, I would be able to kind of go back and reference it and go,
okay.
Oh yeah, in this page this happens. And I'm looking at it now going, what is this? What is this? Yeah, exactly. But I've kind of, as time has gone on, and people who are friends and family with me will know, often I kind of struggle to get to the point sometimes if I'm speaking it out verbally. I struggle to communicate sometimes. But with images, and especially with sequential narratives like comics, it's a lot easier for me to talk through that. Sure. And often, I've done projects where I've done silent comics, and I've had an easier time communicating purely through images and emotion that way than writing dialogue and coming up with character names, coming up with the title of the goddamn thing, and that sort of, that
all the boring extra stuff.
Yeah, all of the stuff that involves words.
Sure.
But, so I think just in general, visual communication and visual storytelling is kind of what I do as part of almost any sort of project.
That's the leading thing.
Yeah, so it's even if in something that's say a still portrait is, you can kind of still get a story of who someone is from that portrait. So you can, from their facial expression, their body language, maybe how they're interacting with another person, you can get a lot just from one thing.
Yeah, light and colour as well.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I like doing, and that's how I like to communicate. So I guess finding ways to show rather than speak things out, so I guess the show don't tell, is 100% what I kind of base a lot of my stuff around. So
tell the story, but in your own very defined idiom. That's kind of the core of it.
Yeah, totally. Okay. But in more of I'll try and keep it a little bit more brief, but in a different angle of the question in terms of in the stories that I do tell or that I do come up with. Yeah. I do a lot of stuff that's kind of around sort of everyday life or everyday people in kind of more extraordinary situations.
Yeah.
But as part of that, kind of highlighting kind of how fun or silly kind of mundane life can be.
Yeah, the absurdism in the minutiae.
Yeah, exactly. Sure. So it's looking at, I didn't do much today, but I saw this. I think one of my current projects it's a bunch of people in this little kind of American town, and there's a lot of weird stuff in this town. So there's monsters, cryptids, there's like conspiracy theories left and right. Everything's a little bit weird, and there's some people who are a little bit odd. But amongst all of that are a lot of really normal people just getting on with their lives. So one part of the story is there's a guy, he's like the average American trucker, fisher guy, kind of all-American stereotype. And he's out, he's fishing, he's having a great day, catches a fish. Big Hydra kind of like Loch Ness monster takes it away, and instead of freaking out that there's a monster in the lake, he just goes, I have to get another fish, and he casts his line back out. So it's the sort of, it's people reacting in really kind of everyday mundane ways to crazy stuff that I really, really love. I love seeing it, I love making it, it makes me laugh, it makes other people laugh. But there's a bit of, even in this little story, which is set somewhere in Texas, there's a very British element of the sort of very dry humour.
And absurdism, which is fairly British tone of humour.
Yeah, extremely, especially if you get down to like stuff like Monty Python.
Of course, yeah.
But that's the stuff that really, really inspires me and really gets my kind of creative gears going and really gets me involved and excited. So I guess that as well, kind of absurdity in just average life.
So part of it is the idiom and the medium, and then also the tone.
Yeah,
also
I think
in one.
I think part of it is probably because I like as someone who's Gen Z, I'm kind of like the older side of Gen Z. A lot of what I grew up with was stuff like the like internet animations, like As If Movie, like cartoons like Adventure Time, Regular Show, all that kind of stuff. Where quite a lot of that was we're going to watch characters run around, and to them this is normal. To us, it's crazy. So it'll be one person whose face turns into a duck. It'll be another guy who's like, he's the last human, but everyone around him just treats him as normal. Regular Show is a whole thing where it's quite literally a couple of guys maintaining a park. And then at the beginning of the episode, they'll go, hey, do you want to get a grilled cheese sandwich? And at the end, they're fighting a form of like synth god. You just kind of go, that was a 10-minute adventure.
Sure.
A lot happened beginning to end, but the kind of setup for that kind of funny part of it is, this is normal. This is boring. How do you turn something everyday and boring into something funny? By taking the stuff that's boring and just going and then onto it.
Sure, escalation.
So I guess, that's two different versions of that answer, I suppose.
Sure, no, that's great. It's very interesting, and I wonder where the source of it comes from. But on another tack, what makes a great comic artist, in your opinion?
So, I mean, with anything, obviously, technique and fundamentals are important.
Sure.
But you don't need to be drawing, like, Da Vinci's old, like, perfect scale models of a human being to draw a comic. Because quite a lot of the time, with comics, you have to be able to draft stuff out quickly, but also draft a lot of different versions of the same thing
to see which works the best.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So it's kind of like it's a weird thing. I'm a big movie and film fan, so I try to like talk about how comics work is also looking at how films work, because it is also like it's a different sequential narrative.
Yeah, it's
just a completely different format. It's one still, the other's moving. The other's live, the other's drawn.
But editing a sequence is part of both.
Yeah, so it's, a director or a cinematographer might look and go, oh, is this shot better from this angle or that angle? When you're making a comic, it might just come to you naturally and you'll go, okay, this is how it's all supposed to be. Or you might be working with a script that says, okay, the camera angle is from top left going down. But you might want to play with that a bit and go, what if the characters were layered in a way where you kind of saw one person's face but not the other? What if you could see both people's reactions? What if you didn't see the people at all but what they were looking at instead as they're talking over it? So that's a big part of it, kind of like approaching it from the what works best for the narrative.
And density sometimes, necessarily?
Yeah, because sometimes...
into one image.
Yeah, it's figuring out how much do you put in a single frame that won't overload it, but also won't stand out too much from the other frames around it.
Sure.
But also, what can go in one frame that doesn't need to be 5 extra frames? So you get this a lot with comic strips. With comic strips, you have to usually boil down to 4 different panels. Sometimes you get 5, sometimes you get 3. So like Peanuts, for example, a lot of the weeks will be in 4 panels. Other ones will be 2 longer ones. Other ones might be a full page. Calvin and Hobbes was similar. Calvin and Hobbes was similar that different weeks would have different kind of lengths or they'd fit together. But generally, comic strips, when you think of one or when you see one online, they're 4 panels. Surprisingly difficult to try and boil down everything into one if it's not quite a simple setup and punchline.
So economy is very important.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's kind of like a lot of the time when you're coming up with a comic, at least in my experience, an awful long amount of the time isn't actually drawing. It's kind of putting different pieces around and figuring out that pacing.
Sure.
So for a comic artist, obviously having a beautiful style is very helpful.
A distinctive style, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But having the ability to kind of pace things and play with things and not be afraid to scrap stuff and try rewriting it or try from a different kind of angle or try a different thing entirely is very useful. What's a good example? A couple of the comic artists I'm really, really big into. One of them's Jamie Hewlett. I've been a huge fan of him since I was a kid.
That's a distinctive style.
Yeah, I grew up being a Gorillaz fan and that whole thing.
Sure.
But something I really like about his artwork is that in different projects, he does approach it from slightly different angles. But especially in his earlier comic work, so stuff like obviously Tank Girl, Hooligan's Haircut, you can tell it's obviously still him because it's his same style. But Tank Girl is a little bit more straightforward. It's to the point, still funny. A lot of the little there's a lot of little tidbits in the background and in the corners of panels.
Sure.
But Hooligan's Haircut, which in the story kind of messes with time and space and dimension. Quite a lot of the panels there also are played with, so they're crammed in together or they're split off or there's stuff in the middle. Okay, it should be good.
Is a zine the most free form of art?
I think, to me, it is. I mean, it kind of depends on the definition of free. Is it free as in, like, huge, giant movements? Is it free in terms of the like, subject you can talk about or paint about or draw or anything about?
I suppose it could be both, but maybe more the subject.
Yeah,
perhaps.
So, I mean, zines, just as they are, they don't have to be about any single thing.
Sure.
But also, they haven't got the same constraints as, like, mainstream publication might have, where, you know, you might be censored or you might not be able to cover certain things, or it might only be like other factor opinion and not your own,
or just more to spec, like
more to spec, like you have to pay attention, you have to use these fonts, you have to use that form of photography. With zines, you don't have to worry about any of that because you're kind of your own boss, or whatever team you're part of is your boss. You don't really have to worry about any of that. And there is also something, at least again, this is from my kind of point of view, but with constraints and with some limitations. So, like with making a mini zine, it's a little booklet, 8 pages, including the front and back cover, made from a single page of paper.
Right.
Obviously, it's not very big, especially if you're using standard printer paper, like A4 paper. You get something that's, about A6, I want to say? But it's extremely freeing that you do have these. There's the initial bit of being daunted, where you have several blank pages, but they're quite small, and you folded it yourself, and there might be a bit sticking out, or you might have like slightly ripped a part of it, and you can just go, "This isn't perfect, so I'm just going to put something in it anyway." Sure. Because you can always try again, especially with a mini zine. It's just, okay, I kind of messed up that page. I'll paste something over it, or I'll fold it. I'll fold a new one and do it again, or I'll just turn it inside out. I'm someone who does better with a limit to explore than with total freedom. Sure. Because I'm also someone who will go, there's too many opportunities, there's too much scope.
Limitation can breed inventiveness.
Yeah, but if I go, okay, I only have this amount of space, or I only have this kind of amount of pages, what can I do in this time? What can I do in this space? So if you're someone who's kind of brand new to putting stuff on a page, or if you're someone who is kind of nervous about exploring new ideas or kind of exploring stuff kind of from your heart or straight from your mind and not really thinking too hard about it. Mini-zines are a really, really, really good way of branching into that in the first place.
Sure, yeah, I get it.
But zines in general and DIY culture in general, obviously quite a lot of people who make zines or stick with DIY culture, sometimes it will be because you just want to do it that way. Sometimes it will be money constraints. Sometimes it will be what you can actually do and what you can manage with what you have. But that's just an outside restraint. And in terms of your own creativity, having something where it's like, put anything on me, use me for anything.
Sure.
You can just run with it.
So it is very free.
Yeah, and there's no wrong way to make a zine. You're not gonna if you do something where you do like a story halfway through and then you suddenly change ship and then do something completely different. Yeah, exactly. Like you start with a story and end with recipes. Yeah. If someone goes, "Oh, I don't really like your zine, you didn't really do it right," don't listen to them because it's your zine. Sure. If you wanted it to be half story, half recipes, it's your choice. Yeah. Exactly.
So new almost mini forms or genres made all the time then.
Yeah.
In a way.
So there's like overarching genres of zines, and then there's people just doing whatever they want in between.
Of course, yeah.
But the genre is less about kind of how it's done and more about just what it is. Yeah. So if it's going to be stuff that's like say it's mostly about Star Trek, for example, that'll fit really well into like traditional fanzines. I guess,
yeah.
If it's something that's more personal to you, even if it's a mix of different things, that would normally be called like a perzine or a journal zine.
Right.
If it was something that's much more just the artwork, even if it's a billion different types of artwork or a bunch of different people's artwork, that's an art zine.
Sure.
But obviously you can have bits and pieces of different things. So you could have an art zine that has one page that is fan art for something else.
Yeah.
You could have a personal zine that diverges and goes, I'm going to show you my art now and not talk over it. You know, there's ways to mix the genre. It's like with movies. It's like mixing genres and playing with things. There's certain themes and certain trends and certain, like, not stereotypes, but
recurring archetypes.
Exactly, recurring archetypes.
Sure.
But there's always a way to mix it up and try something new. And zines are so perfect for that. As for anyone who's like a young artist or an emerging artist. Someone returning to art, someone trying new forms of art. There's so many ways to explore it.
Sure. Well, talking of variety of people getting involved, and I know you've done a lot of work with the community, is it important to you, again, almost going back to the heart of your passion, is it important to you to serve the community
So
at a deep level?
I think, so as a kid and like kind of mid-teen, I kind of already knew very, very quickly what I wanted to go into, even if exactly what I wanted to do changed. So through college and uni, I kind of went between, I want to do concept art for video games. I want to do comic art. I want to try something completely new. I want to do something a bit more, corporate.
Sure.
And then going back into, but I always come up with the stories. I want to do comics. And that's kind of more what I've settled in with a lot of other... You only live once. I want to do a whole bunch of other stuff as well. This is just my main thing.
Yeah, that's the main magnet.
Exactly. It's too boring to kind of go, I only do this stuff. And this is my only style.
But also choosing, I suppose, a specialism is useful in terms of focus. Like, this is the main thing, but it's not the only thing. Yeah,
totally. I feel like, especially young artists get stuck, because I've had this before as well, where you get stuck and you look through someone else's Instagram profile and you go, all their stuff is lovely. They do a lot of the same kind of themes. They have a pretty consistent style. They do a lot of consistent type of work. Why can't I pick one thing? Why am I always going between things? And it's fine for someone to have a style and have a thing.
Sure.
Because if that's what you want to do, I mean, no one else should tell you.
Well, for some people, presumably, it comes that naturally.
Yeah, exactly.
This is it.
Yeah, totally. And for other people, it might be a different thing where you might go between different ideas, or you might go between different styles or different main focuses. Or you might have one main focus and a lot of other stuff outside of that.
Satellites.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm that latter type where I have the main thing of comics and webtoons, but I like doing a bit of pattern, I like doing a bit of character design, I like doing a whole bunch of other little bits and pieces, but I come back to this because it's what keeps showing itself through everything.
Sure.
But
and then as regards to community?
Yeah, with community, it's as a team, I struggled a lot to find opportunities as a young artist, both to be taken seriously, but also to find places to learn, to find people to work with. And I mean, I grew up working class as well, so it's like a lot of it was having to spend a lot of money to get into certain courses so like certain like Saturday clubs and that kind of thing was quite hard to kind of get into. But I was also home educated, so I didn't get a lot through like school programs or anything. I had to kind of go around with my mum and dad and go, hey, can I join in with this thing? Or make my own opportunities. And it's kind of still the case where there's quite a lot of young people who, whether it's they don't get that support from school or from family or from friends, where they really want to do something, especially something creative, but they don't really know where to go to do it, or who to speak to. Exactly. Because we're still quite at a point where a lot of young people, even if there is a bit more support now than there was when I was younger, there's not a lot of space to be taken seriously in.
Sure.
So it's kind of trying to make those spaces, find those spaces to share them around. But also in terms of local community, I mean, Stonehouse is an area where there's quite a lot of children, especially who maybe live in poverty, or maybe don't get a lot of support, or maybe don't have many places to actually go to spend their time. I think not too long ago there was somewhere near Union Street, there's this parking area where these groups of kids kept having to be like moved on because they were loitering. But they had nowhere else to go. There was no community space. There was no community room or centre, especially not for a group of like teenage kids. Where a lot of the time now you might have people go, oh, they might cause some trouble. They might just be kids. So trying to kind of be there in local spaces, trying to support local spaces, trying to connect people to local spaces is something I'm really, really, really into outside of all of my kind of like art things.
So because it was hard for you want to provide for others, that kind of ethos?
Definitely. I think it's kind of like sort of taking what I've got now and kind of trying to pass it on.
Sure.
I suppose.
Yeah, not pull the ladder up, keep the ladder down, so there's more opportunity.
Yeah, totally. It's a weird thing, especially being an artist, which is also quite a competitive kind of thing if you're into illustration and comic art. Is
busy space.
It's busy. In a way, it is competitive. In a way, you are competing with other people, especially people in your own course or in your own town.
Yeah, trying to stand out or what have you.
But I'm not a really competitive person. I like working with other people. I like seeing other people get opportunities or helping them get that. But I think in terms of trying to help other people, I'm mostly trying to help young people.
Sure.
So I do a fair amount of like zine workshops. I go back to places like my old college to talk about the stuff I've done. I'm working on projects talking about how it was kind of growing up home ed and because I grew up fully home educated and then chose to go into further education up to the point of doing a master's. And that was all like obviously with support from my parents, but also a lot of that was me going, I want to do art and sticking at it and kind of almost out of spite sticking with it for years and years and years and years through all of the like, oh, well, you need your GCSEs to do this. You need to do this. You need to do that to do this. You know, will you be taken seriously here? That whole thing.
Sure.
So it's like trying to find ways to help the current set of teens and young people find their voice and find their place is something that I feel like I get a lot out of it emotionally, but also it feels good to help out in that regard.
Yeah. We're talking of community to the wider scale, the wider lens, and I suppose linked to what you've already been talking about. How do you think society could function better? British society, English society.
Ooh.
That's a very massive question. I suppose if you had to boil it down, it could be a change of government. You think would be a good ticket to positive change, in your opinion, or certain schemes, campaigns? More money for the arts? I don't know.
I mean, money is the kind of thing that everyone needs at the moment.
Unfortunately,
Yeah, I mean, the NHS is struggling with money, schools are struggling with money, literally everyone is. It's so tough. But with arts especially, I feel like instead of like a big government change, I feel like the change kind of has to happen within communities.
So more of a local level.
Yeah, so more of a local level is there's a lot of something I've noticed over time, which I think is also maybe part of my own upbringing, is I didn't get a lot of the like kind of school cliques or kind of social rules and stuff like that that I've kind of seen even in some local communities where things have been a bit more cliquey or there's been like more popular kids and that kind of thing.
Tribalism.
Yeah. Where it's kind of in a weird ironic thing, especially for people who like comics and like illustration and like artwork, is a lot of those people kind of most likely grew up being the weird kid or grew up maybe being bullied or had various kind of like issues socially.
Sure.
Because I definitely did. I was a super shy and awkward kid. And for a really long time I felt like I was more comfortable talking with adults than with kids my own age just because of the stuff I was doing. But now it's like there's definitely points where someone kind of new coming into the mix or people who aren't really part of a certain friend group do feel on the outside. And that's not just in terms of finding opportunities or finding places to work and that kind of thing. It's much more on a social level of working with other artists and finding friends and other artists. So something I kind of constantly try to do is like kind of try and read the room, who's potentially more left out, who potentially is turning up quite a lot. So you get it a lot in art fairs kind of across the country where a lot of the same people kind of turn up.
Yeah, I've seen that, yeah.
I mean, I'm not someone who's not guilty. I mean, the place where you met me, the comic and zine fair, I've been there each time.
Sure.
So it's like I've consistently been someone who's been able to get the opportunity to be.
But they are very important calendar events, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, especially for me, where it's like it's comics and zines. That's my thing.
Sure.
But it's making sure that there's opportunities that are open for people and don't just go to like the group of mates or to a small sect of people who are like. Or have already been there for a while in the community. So
initiatives to include more people is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Right.
Just kind of like to keep...
Broadly.
to keep open, to keep fresh, because also if you're kind of around the same people for a while, you do kind of eventually get the same feedback or it becomes more of a kind of like...
of course.
Just tunnel of the same stuff. And sometimes kind of branching out and meeting someone new
true.
kind of helps. But also... meeting people from different forms of art really helps. So it's all well and good talking to another illustrator about another illustrator about illustration.
There's a lot of syllables there.
But some of the kind of most kind of invigorating and inspiring conversations I've had are with writers or with filmmakers or like other forms of artwork. There's, especially in Plymouth, I think a lot of us in the kind of local art scene need to go out and chat to each other more. And this is definitely also with me as well, is I need to actually go out and meet people and like this isn't me saying, oh, everyone else is doing the wrong thing except for me. I'm part of this as well. I also need to branch out and meet people and go to all sorts of different events. But it's something that should definitely happen on the wider scale of Plymouth. But in terms of a much larger, I guess, like countrywide interpretation of the question, I think, especially with my sort of generation, is we need to kind of give each other more time to speak and not kind of jump on each other and then kind of cause a lot of infighting. You see this especially online where people get, especially people my age, will get kind of caught up, kind of arguing with each other.
Yeah.
To the point that the argument is about the argument.
Yeah, it just gets lost in a vortex.
And you look at where it started and it was like, which character from this thing is the best character?
Yeah, why is it now life and death?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think part of it definitely came from COVID, where we were all kind of stuck inside for a while and then became very kind of like online centered. Yeah. But especially for younger Gen Z, it's like kind of growing, like it's the whole thing people talk about where it's like Gen Z in general grew up with internet and with social media and all that kind of thing. But I mean, I'm 24 and I remember how different it used to be.
The before times, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But the kind of like, I want to say, not just pre-COVID, but pre-2015, I want to say, before stuff really went crazy.
Yeah.
So stuff that's a lot more corporate. I mean, we're engaging with these different sites and different places, different platforms, knowing full well that quite a few of them are there and do things and push things deliberately to annoy us.
To sow more division and outrage.
Yeah, exactly. Because stuff that people want to argue about or get annoyed about gets more engagement. And part of that is the kind of feeling rewarded by having someone reply to you and getting all the likes and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But part of that is also us in, should we be so reactionary all the time?
Yeah, definitely not.
Yeah, so it's, sometimes you get annoyed and you argue and you do that kind of thing. So it happens.
Everyone has moments, yeah, of course.
But when there's quite a lot happening in the world and quite a lot happening locally and quite a lot of happening in our own individual personal lives, I feel like we can afford to give each other just a bit of a break and
more grace.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of arguing, just have a chat. And if this starts getting more heated, or if we start feeling like this is a bit much, we'll give it a break.
Take a moment, yeah.
And take a moment.
Sure.
Because I'm from a chaotic household. I know what it's like to get stuck in an argument. But, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that we kind of fight each other over that really doesn't need to be.
So more initiatives to bring people together?
Yeah, and
in real life.
Supporting talking more than fighting. But also, dialogue. I think just that in general.
Sounds good to me. Well, what's your process for a new project? You start from scratch, your workflow. Is it throwing paint at a wall?
It's become a kind of, since uni, it's become a bit of a tradition for me that I will always start something with like a spider diagram mind map.
Right.
It got to the point where in uni, I think I was making...
That's the Kitty code.
Yeah, I was making like 5 mind maps for the beginning of a project.
Right.
Almost like trying to get everything as possible. Like, okay, so this is the brief.
Yeah.
These are the ways I can interpret it. And then those will have their own branching off lines.
Yeah.
And it's then, the worst part for me is trying to make a decision. Because I love coming up with all of the different ideas.
It all looks glorious.
Exactly.
Oh no, now I've got to crunch it down. My babies.
I want to do it all.
Exactly.
Why can't I do it all?
I know the feeling.
But, so picking that idea is often quite hard, and I get a lot of, I try and reach out for a lot of feedback, like, hey, what do you guys think is the best thing? Or, in uni, it would be going to my tutors and going, what seems appropriate.
Yeah,
a lot of the time I go to my family because they are harsh sometimes, but they're usually my best critics because they know how I work and they know what I like doing.
Okay.
And they know what works.
Right.
So they're a bit more honest, which, we'll start a bit of like a, no, Mum, you don't understand me kind of thing. But in the end, it's like, okay, no, this was actually the best decision. I just didn't quite see it.
So that's stage 2, is once you've got the decision?
Yeah, so then stage 2 is, if it's a comic project, for example, it will be a lot of back and forth between, making some mood boards, doing a bunch of little, beginning kind of concept sketches.
Right.
Bits of writing. A lot of the time, I try not to steal other people's ideas, but I will, have a whole kind of point of
Well, there can be references, can't
Yeah, exactly.
they?
It'll have, references and inspiration.
Yeah.
So, again, weirdly enough, I get quite a lot of inspiration from movies and TV shows.
I can see that.
So that goes down sometimes into, certain panels or shots as I'll go, I really like I want to say, for example, Shaun of the Dead, I like how he does that rapid fire shot between different actions. And I'll do something similar.
Kind of homage almost?
Yeah. I do a lot of little, references and tidbits and homages. So I love hiding tiny bits and pieces in the background of stuff. But that's something that comes much later in the process.
Right.
So it will be, okay, in this page, what's a good example? In a webtoon I did about making webtoons, hilariously called Making Webtoons, there is a point where I'm holding open a page to describe what a double-page spread looks like in a horizontal sense, in a kind of traditional comic sense. And I think, for a while, I did a few different doodles. I can't remember if it's I think it's the final one I chose, but the image on that spread is a scene randomly from, I think, Metal Gear Solid 3.
Nice, great game.
Because I just went, you know what? I like that scene. I like how it's shot. I haven't even played the game. I like it. I'm putting it in. People who know will know. And then I've got little in-jokes with friends that have made it into other comics. So I think there's... Oh, do I mention it here? There's, we over lockdown, we did this, group collage project where we would make magazine covers that were deliberately quite terrible and had a lot of really, really stupid stuff on it.
Okay.
And it would be like a stock image of a guy doing a thumbs up. Right. And it would say like Playgirl Entertainment for Women.
Nice.
But all the articles would be stuff like, what do you do if he leaves you for a carrot? And that kind of thing. Like really kind of silly stuff. And then the currency would change every time. I think by issue 5 we were using Monopoly currency.
I like it. So you thread those references back into your contemporary work?
Yeah, so it's like it's stuff that mentioning it to someone else, like especially with the whole Playgirl thing, it's like obviously the joke about Playboy. It's obviously going to be like, for some people it's going to be, oh, that's a spoof magazine, that's just pretending it's something else. Yeah. But for me, looking back at it, and for people I know looking back at it, it's the
it's
thing.
a trace to a time and a place.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I like calling back to those little moments, even if not many people are fully going to get it.
Yeah.
If it's something that would work universally as like a little funny joke. Yeah. But if there's a slightly
ideally it can be both at once.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
the perfect Easter egg.
I love Easter eggs.
Yeah.
As a kid, I would go through Wikipedia and wiki pages hunting for Easter eggs and going, "Did you guys know this?"
On the hunt.
Yeah.
For them eggs.
It just absolutely loved it. So that's a big part of the process. Is later on when I'm confident with the layout and the story and what's going on, is when I'm actually going through, I will add little bits and pieces.
Sure, for flavour.
And also, by that point, I've already stared at it for so long that I'm starting to go like,
I need to shush it up a bit.
Exactly.
We'll go mad.
Yeah, it's like, I'm going to go mad if I see this panel again. I'm going to add something funny in.
So how many drafts do you do?
Ooh.
Typically how many? As an average?
Boy.
Median?
So, the usual process I go through is super basic sketch.
Just
and that is like
lines.
Yeah, literally like the stick figures on a little kind of, usually on a zine, on a dummy book.
Okay.
And I'll like take photos of those, put them in, and usually, traditionally, I'll use those as reference to do the like slightly more developed sketch.
Right.
Then I'll take that slightly more developed sketch and I'll take that digitally, and then I start kind of working on almost like a second sketch layer, which is this is the final shot. If there's anything I want to move around, I'll move it now. Right. If there's anything I kind of want to rephrase or a character I want to redo, I'll do it now. Okay. And then it's the final stage, which sometimes is digital. Sometimes I then print out those pages and line them with actual ink.
Right.
Kind of depends on the project. I like going back and forth between digital because I like the very kind of real lines and real feeling of ink, but the convenience of digital is also way too good.
Escape,
yeah, so it normally goes super basic sketch, slightly more sketch, digital further sketch, traditional inks, and then goes back into digital for colour and extra bits and fixings and that kind of stuff. So it's like cleaning up areas where I've gone with a blob, but the rest of the page has been fine, so I've gone, well, I don't want to redo the whole thing. Or it'll be stuff like, oh, I've accidentally done someone's fringe wrong in this page, I'll just slightly adjust it.
The fringe.
Exactly, not the fringe, the character's all wrong.
Not again.
Honestly, with character details, I'm surprisingly decent with it, but I have had points where, because I've worked with something over a period of time, I've started with the reference and I've kept close to the reference, but then as time has gone on, at some point I've accidentally changed something, not realised it, and then gone along and gone, this character has evolved as the pages have
What's that
progressed.
Still doing there?
Yeah, it's only been in like little ways.
Sure.
I think it's only because I'm staring at it for such a long time.
Yeah.
I think it's stuff only other people wouldn't
Probably
notice.
Not.
There's been points I've like been there, kind of ripping out my hair, going, "Oh, I've wrecked it. What have I done?"
It's entirely ruined.
Exactly, and the person I'm showing it to goes, "There's the same."
What are you talking about? Yeah.
But this line is slightly on the left.
Look at that line. Look at the millimetre.
That one line. Yeah, it's I used to be a huge perfectionist, and I still have moments now where, especially if I'm working on a commission for someone else, I want it to be as good as possible. Of course. So even tiny, like a pixel worth of error, I will agonise over. And if I've spotted it before it's final, I am going to go back and fix it. Yeah. Because even if it's kind of inconvenient to me to hunt through the layers and then go doink and then go back, it feels, even if it's such a small thing that I would die being the only person knowing it was there.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
It feels wrong. I have to do the kind of best I can. But in terms of general like perfectionism, I feel like it's what stops a lot of people from getting stuff done.
Definitely.
So
definitely.
Over time,
you have to let it go.
Yeah, exactly. Over time, I'm still going through that process, but still trying to get better at going. It doesn't have to be great.
Yeah,
I can always do it again.
And also,
and carry on and actually get it done.
You can get lost in the literal weeds of the micro when really the macro, and no one else is really going to notice it. You know, it's important to remind yourself, like, why am I getting sort of OCD obsessed about this shit when really no one else will know? So to keep the perspective of the big picture as well as the big canvas, as well as like, you know, like you say, pixels or lines or could be edits, could be frames of a piece of tape.
Yeah,
or, you know,
working with for people who maybe don't work with visual art or with illustration in comics, it might sound like a kind of weird kind of concept, but a lot of the time, putting something down, stepping back and coming back even after 5 minutes can totally change your perspective on what you're doing. Yeah. Because it's almost like you become numb to certain things after a certain point of time, or you kind of like, it's like you need a break. Yeah, it's like trying to lift something and put it down over and over again. Yeah. Eventually, your arms are going to get tired, and that kind of works the same with like your technique. Yeah. So if you're drawing the same face or the same character over and over and over again between panels, there will be points you feel like you're slipping because you are slipping. You're kind of, your brain's getting tired, your arms getting tired. You might have the process down of do the face, do the hair, do the eyes. You need to step away and come back, because it's like you come back and go, oh, okay, the eye angle's wrong here. The face isn't consistent. Maybe the body isn't consistent. Maybe the expression isn't an expression that character would make. It's just part of the process is taking time to do stuff, and that's something that quite a lot of people who are outside that process definitely need to try and understand a bit more. Yeah. That it does take... Sometimes art takes time, and some of that time is literally taking a second to go away and come back to make sure it's the best it can be. Yeah, I guess that's different elements of my process, but also the process of doing art in general. Yeah, well, it's an elusive thing with the goalpost constantly moving, isn't it, really? Yeah. It's always different. Well, can you tell me about your recent project? Yes. So... that was an extremely, extremely fun one, an extremely big one. So I worked with the Uni of Sheffield, specifically with Dr. Susan Oman, to create, kind of co-write. I did all the artwork, but co-written, researched, kind of going around and talking to different people for their feedback and for inspiration. It is a series of little informative webtoons, kind of based around AI literacy and kind of getting people across the UK to learn a bit more about AI, both good and bad. Sure. But also the different types of AI, because it is, especially now, it's this big kind of overhanging, scary thing that a lot of people are really into it, a lot of people really aren't. But because AI, or artificial intelligence has become a big kind of blanket name for so many different things. Yeah. Again, it's like earlier, it's caused a lot of arguments when it just needs a discussion. Yeah, and then deciphering it. Yeah, so stuff like, I mean, if you look at things like spell checks and predictive text and... Even calculators. Calculators, text-to-speech... All of that is a form of AI. Yeah. If you look at things like Google search engines, another form of AI. It's a numbers system. Then you'll get totally different types of things. So in video games, AI normally refers to like characters walking around on their little set paths, or it's going, okay, so if a monster sees a player, will it chase? Will it go around this corner to try and find you? All their moves in combat. Exactly. It's pre-written stuff, but also responses to certain situations. Yeah. And then you also get other forms, like you'll get generative AI, so you'll get like ChatGPT, you'll get AI art, you'll get all this stuff that is, some people might find it helpful and other people don't, and it might come as a detriment to artwork or to people's work or to... the human touch. Yeah, there's a lot of discussion there. And then you'll have other forms of AI that is meant to help, but very, very easily and very quickly you can see how it can be used by people maybe with more malicious intentions.
Unfortunately.
So a big topic that we did go back and forth on a bit was it was AI used in facial recognition software. And we've had that for a while already.
Yeah.
With like iPhone, etc., kind of scanning your face, let you into your phone, that sort of stuff. But we're also in different places, it's being used to recognise people and see who is currently wanted by the police, for example.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the stuff that's happening is people are being profiled by this, and people are being falsely arrested or falsely accused, or falsely flagged, and it will be something as basic as literally flagged because of their skin colour. And it's stuff that is quite dire and is quite scary. And you can see areas where it is a bit like, are we going to Skynet with this? Maybe should we... Do we have enough movies and books and comics and enough bits of media?
And also, do you need to expedite everything?
Yeah, exactly. So we didn't really go into it as much on this project, but with AI artwork, this is something I'm probably going to work on more as a personal thing, but there's a lot in terms of, what's the good and bad in it. Some people find it really convenient to come up with little, like, sketches or with ideas. Other people who feel that they don't have the skill to draw use it as a replacement. Other people use it because they don't want to hire anyone, whether they don't have the money or they just...
Yeah, it can be a budgetary thing.
It could be a budgetary thing, or it could be a time thing.
Yeah, that too.
But on the other side of that, you have a lot of artists who are looking at it, looking at the posters, looking at all sorts of things and going, that could have been... Like, I could have done that.
Yeah, you could have paid a human.
That could have been work for me. That could have been experience for me. I mean, there's quite a lot of projects that... I mean, even here in Plymouth, I've seen AI-generated posters for, like, theatre productions and stuff like that. And it's almost it's the weird irony of artists not really valuing other artists' time. Like, you can fully understand budget gets in the way of a lot of things. But even then, I mean, there are young people who are looking for stuff to build their portfolio. There's students who are looking, again, for things to build their portfolio. It is the kind of taboo of do it for exposure or not. But if you don't have the budget, there are ways to work with people. Or you can, it's perfectly fine to do something yourself, even if it's not amazing. Like, you can do a poster with stick people in it. You can use a photo of your own production or of your own team. There's sites like Canva and all sorts of things that let you do pretty decent and pretty basic graphic design in free ways. And it just kind of needs to be more of a discussion that isn't just everyone using AI art is lazy and horrible and wants artists to die, because that's not the case.
That's too binary and too
There's a lot of people who just don't realise that there is actually a really big effect on this. And there's a big effect on artists who use AI artwork, and especially to put people's artwork into AI. I think a lot of people just don't realise that there is a big thing around it. And I mean, I'm someone who would rather have a conversation and try to explain something rather than shout at them.
Well, it's more constructive to have a conversation.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's also not ignoring that there are people out there, mostly online, who are consciously doing it. And there's, there's always going to be the kind of meanie, kind of tech bro online who's going to go, well, now we don't need real artists because I've created my own Supergirl fan art. It's like, but there's a billion pictures of Supergirl. Like, you don't need to create a new one. I'm using that as an example because it's one I consciously remember seeing a while ago. It's just the first thing that popped in mind. But, it's just that has to be a big conversation when it comes to AI art. But with this project, it's kind of looking at everyday stories, everyday people. It looks at AI in 3 different categories. So it looks at AI in media, whether that's on the news or online in like videos or stuff like scams that you see in adverts. There's another one which is more everyday use of how each of us might use it. So there's people who use AI powered like organizers. There's other people who use stuff like Microsoft Copilot at work. Don't really want to, but it's because it's being kind of pushed out in that setting. It's in the workflow, whether it's disruptive or not. There's other people who see, again, more AI in terms of social media. So you get like the kind of the AI brain rot memes and that sort of thing.
Lots of
but
names.
also AI in schools and education.
Mm-hmm.
So that's looking at AI kind of software and places that could actually be helpful. So that's translators or sites that kind of target areas you're sort of working, like you need to work on certain areas.
Yeah.
Or it's looking at students who might use ChatGPT to cheat on essays, or it might be teachers who use ChatGPT to come up with their lesson plans. I'm using ChatGPT again as an example, but it's like looking at, it's not just students who are using it, it's also teachers and it's also other people kind of around the system. But it's kind of from a sort of neutral perspective, the point of these webtoons is literally just to kind of open the conversation and generally make people aware of the different things that exist, whether that's something that would help them out or something that they need to be aware of to keep themselves safe.
Yeah, and take the sting out of it by making it a big less, a big scary thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And a monolith and be like, no, here's the nuts and bolts of it.
Yeah, because it's terrifying to just be told there are AI capable of copying the voices of your loved ones.
That sounds scary.
To scam you on the phone. But it's a lot less scary when you're told it, obviously, through a comic, so it's kind of softened the blow that way, being told through a story.
Sure.
But also to try and go, there are ways to, combat this, there's ways to stay safe, there's ways to stay aware. This is just the first step in becoming aware of it, instead of just going, I know this thing exists and it's terrifying.
Well, change is terrifying. The internet was terrifying when that came about. And, even people like William Blake, Thomas Hardy, they were very much against the Industrial Revolution. They thought it was going to be the end times. And it wasn't.
Yeah.
People always respond that way. Often they just need someone or some services like you're providing to explain things more and say, hey, look, it's not the end of the world. It's just a new tool. It depends how it's used.
Yeah, definitely. Because, another example ironically in films, we've had stuff like face filters on phones and face filters on shows for a really long time, whether that's de-aging an actor or CGI effects over someone's face, stuff like not quite computer-generated graphics like the Avatar movies, but other things like the actual like motion recognition in the kind of mocap in the first place.
Definitely,
have elements of some kind of AI thing as part of it to recognise the movements and record that down.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you also have other kind of things like, I think it was The Brutalist had AI artwork in various scenes, but I think the main actor, he had an AI-enhanced accent, where that became a big topic of discussion at the time. So it's looking at how AI in different areas actually help, benefit, or don't. Because there might be some actors who are fine having previous footage of them used to de-age them in a movie. There might be actors who are fine having their accent altered with AI.
But like auto-tune, really,
yeah, exactly. It's kind of like auto-tune. But then you'll have other people, like you'll have accent trainers going, well, that's directly impacts
this is my industry, you're putting down the toilet or whatever.
Or there'll be other actors who are going, no, just because I've been in movies since I was a kid doesn't give you the right to take all of that and put it into an AI.
Well, intellectual property, etc.
Exactly. So there's 1,000 different conversations to be had around AI, and this project is literally just to kind of open that a bit.
A taster.
So I'm hoping
for everyone.
I'm hoping people do get it and do enjoy it, because it isn't meant to lecture, it isn't meant to make people feel good or necessarily bad about AI. It's just supposed to let them know the facts.
Yes, here it is.
Yeah.
Sure. Once you're more informed, that's already, it should hopefully be a big part of whatever you fear it to be, this big demon brought down to more of a reasonable size. Like, that's what it is.
Because it is scary. And the constant developments and the fact that a lot of AI develops before governments can even begin to handle
so fast,
it is scary. And it's scary for a lot of people for a lot of different reasons. But trying to understand it and how it's used and how it's made can help you kind of find ways to stay safe, but also to notice it and to twig it. Which makes things seem a lot less scary. And I feel like even though a lot of people say AI is here and isn't going to go away, that is a pretty kind of, for some people that's like a positive saying, for other people that's kind of dire. I'm leaning more towards the second half with myself, but there are ways in which people are becoming tired of AI, and it's the kind of novelty of it has become
the shine gets dulled.
So you'll have, using AI art as an example again, I think Wizards of the Coast, who own
the Magic the Gathering.
Magic the Gathering and Dungeons and Dragons, they're like the big overarching guys for that.
Yeah, the big ones.
They a little while ago made an announcement that they wouldn't use AI artwork in any of their books or products because one of their artists did for a Dungeons and Dragons expansion. Not expansion, but one of their books.
Yeah, sure.
And a lot of people pushed back on that and went, we bought this, we expect to see actual artwork.
That's a big part of why you're buying it, actually.
Exactly. So that, I can't remember if the artwork was taken out or fixed, but it did, because of the pushback, the company changed its mind.
Sure.
I mean, I think the Oscars, it was either the Oscars or Golden Globes just announced they wouldn't be accepting anything that used AI in the process.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, you have the SAG-AFTRA, I think that's what it's called, the artists and actors strikes about AI likenesses and AI voices. There's all sorts of pushback for all sorts of reasons. So it feels like the badder AIs are being talked about and are being handled, but we also need to make a bit of space for people who are just looking at other forms of AI in general that are beneficial.
Yeah, well, it is a tool. It depends how it's used.
Yeah, because it isn't a new thing. There are bits of AI that we have used for years and years.
Yeah, a long time.
And they might have their own issues. So predictive text might be scary because of the kind of, the thought that there is something tracking what you usually say. That's scary for its own reason. But we've also had that for years and years and years.
Yeah.
That conversation has been around for years and years and years. We just need to keep having those conversations and using those to make change, like how other people are pushing back on how generative AI is used in different places. But it's a big thing, and I'm not necessarily an AI expert, but I've learned a lot through this project.
Sure. Well, on a more positive note, what is your dream commission? Something really cool, fun.
Good. Would it be too bad to say someone just funding me to do what I want? No.
No, it can be, but if it was that, what would you make? What would be the project that would be the most crystallised version of you? Something
that I've wanted to do for a while is make a truly multimedia comic / webtoon that brings in sound, brings in audio, brings in music, brings in maybe even a bit of voice acting, brings in animations, brings in interactive elements where you can tap in and interact with the world through the character's eyes. And there are ways to do this. So you could kind of make a demo version through motion comics where you can add in, you can make it more of a kind of cinematic kind of experience through sound and voice acting and animation. But with the interactive elements, the service for Webtoons just called Webtoon. It does have a few actually really cool interactive comics there, but the software it isn't open to use to add in animation and sound effects. First of all, in the first place, you have to be one of their commissioned artists.
Right.
So how Netflix has Netflix originals, Webtoon has Webtoon originals that are commissioned, continuous projects. But with the interactive things, which they've done a lot with horror projects, so it'll be panels that when you're scrolling past a certain point, they animate, so it'll be a scary face turning around. A jump scare. But it'll be a type of GIF that once you get to a certain point, it activates and doesn't re-loop.
Sure.
It keeps you there.
That'd be weird,
And there'll be other forms where it automatically scrolls for you, taking away the kind of autonomy of peeking around the corner and turning the next page yourself to scare you.
Right.
So it brings in the kind of spooks that you get in a horror game or a horror movie and takes it into a comic format.
Sure.
That are really, really, really cool. Or it brings in AR, augmented reality things where it shows something through your actual camera. Or it's a panel that turns as you scroll through because it suddenly goes 3D. It's just that stuff isn't available to the general public. So being able to work on something like that or work on a resource like that with a team of people who actually know how to code things would be awesome.
Sure.
So I'd love to do a project of not just setting something up for people to use, but also making something to kind of promote it.
Yeah.
That would be my dream.
Sounds lush. On the subject of things being lush, where do you find your inspiration?
So definitely movies.
Right.
Mostly, I'm a really, really big fan, and kind of always have been, of like 90s and early noughties sort of like teen movies, but also
great time.
like kind of oddball comedy, kind of like buddy comedy movies.
Okay.
So I'm a big fan of Mallrats. I'm a big fan of Napoleon Dynamite.
Lush.
I really like, on a different kind of thing, I really love Wes Anderson's work.
Yeah.
Very specifically, one of my favourite movies of his is The Life Aquatic.
Yeah, it's
with
great.
Steve Zissou.
Yeah,
First of all, amazing cast, amazing soundtrack, amazing everything. But that movie does a really good job of getting a whole group of weirdos and making them feel normal.
Yeah, and it's very rich.
Yeah,
They feel very real.
That's something I quite like a lot from Wes Anderson's earlier work, especially.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of Jack Black and his kind of comedy.
Right.
So
some more bombastic stuff as well, and
some
visual kind of stuff.
So School of Rock, Nacho Libre especially.
Yeah.
So Napoleon Dynamite, Nacho Libre, and a few of Wes Anderson's earlier stuff have really similar visual language.
Yeah,
so it'll be overhead shots of tables and trays of food and that kind of thing.
Quite detached.
Very central kind of shots of single characters. Similar characters in terms of people who have like a heart of gold but are weird.
Sure.
Kind of little stories like a guy just trying to get by, a guy who wants to, explore the kind of luchador part of himself, but also help the orphans and help his own community. People do it going on personal hunts for a banana shark.
Sure.
It's that kind of thing of people doing stuff that is a bit out of the ordinary, but they are fairly ordinary people that I absolutely adore.
So movies are a very big touchstone for you.
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
I've kind of always been a movie maniac. I obviously love animations like a lot of Studio Ghibli, or Studio Ghibli, I know is the proper way of saying it, but I grew up saying Ghibli, so I'm going to say Ghibli. So Spirited Away, Kiki's Delivery Service, Princess Mononoke, Porco Rosso, not a lot of people mention that one, but that's also a highlight in terms of normal people in a strange situation. More recently, I've kind of explored more kind of like B-movie horror and kind of slasher horror. Kind of horror comedy is a big thing of mine as well.
Yeah, that's a great genre.
So, Shaun of the Dead.
Sure.
And blanking on things. I really like What We Do in the Shadows. Stuff that kind of thing. That stuff that brings in comedy and people who are like, oh, I'm going to have a flat meeting with my other vampire buddies. It's just, that kind of stuff always makes me laugh and have fun. So I love that kind of thing.
Do people jump out to you too? Like, not people watching necessarily, but do actual people inspire you?
Yeah.
Could be a milkman, or could be your mother, or could be someone at a bus stop, I don't know.
Ooh, so I do, so in one of the projects I do anyway, I do a, like, kind of, it is autobiographical thing, like, about me, my cat, my family, my friends. So I do draw inspiration from them and what they do and what I do with them for, direct inspiration for stories. But also, it's like, I like listening to the different stories people have from childhood.
Right.
Especially, like, people similar age to me, and kind of going back on that nostalgia and going, yes, the good times where we were running around with hammer beads and the loom band bracelets and that sort of thing. So I'm on a big nostalgia bend as well. So that entire kind of like set of kind of aesthetics and themes,
collective memories.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So I like taking those memories and trying to like
synthesize them into characters.
Yeah. So it's something that I do want to do is like have a hand at trying something semi-autobiographical. So trying to find a way to talk about stuff I'd lived through and stuff other people have lived through a made-up character.
Sure.
But it's just trying to find a way to approach that I haven't quite settled on yet. But yeah, obviously really like comics as well. So I grew up a lot reading stuff like, big fan of Nimona, Lumberjanes was another big one, Paper Girls. Basically for a while I really liked anything that was a group of girls doing stuff, because at the time, obviously very relatable for me as a like young teen.
Did you read Rat Queens as well?
I did not actually.
Might dig it. Lots of fun.
I'll give it a check.
That's Image Comics as well.
Rat Queens.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I'll check that out.
Basically kind of D&D fantasy genre,
Ooh.
but with a bunch of kick-ass women.
That's cool. That's fun.
And bonkers, like real action comedy mashup.
Oh, I'm going to have to check that out then. Yeah,
Alright, sorry.
Action comedies are really fun.
Carry on.
Adventures. I do get a lot of inspiration from music as well. So
Okay, cool.
sometimes with certain projects, I have Spotify playlists that are like the soundtracks I've made up in my head for if it were a film or if it were a series, what would be in the soundtrack if I could choose.
So like the theme OST for this project almost.
So
That's quite cool.
it's gone to the point where there are certain songs I cannot listen to without imagining my comic.
Right, that's where it belongs.
Yeah, exactly. So sometimes I'll
Right.
even listen to those songs to get into the zone of what I'm working on. And it
Sure,
might be stuff
sure.
that's thematic. It might be stuff that's like of the time. It might be stuff that's kind of like got a funny little thing to it.
Just somehow evokes the character or the piece.
Yeah. So it's the kind of ha 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 kind of element as well. So one of the projects I've got is it's sat on the back burner for a while, but to summarise it, it's like a kind of spoof on slashers.
Right.
And one of the songs in this mixtape is Psycho Killer by Talking Heads, because of course.
Yeah.
And then some of the other stuff will be as weird as like kind of cheery things that I imagine being like. I'm a big fan of scenes where it's like there'll be a fight happening. It's a cheery song.
Yeah, juxtaposition.
So like James Gunn doing that always makes me go, ha ha,
course,
that's
yeah.
amazing, beautiful
Tarantino
work.
as well.
Yes. I've only seen a couple of Tarantino things, but similar kind of vibe.
Yeah, Pulp Fiction especially.
Or it'll be stuff that might in the lyrics mention, like blood, murder, and that kind of thing, and it'll get me into the vibe of that character. Or it might be a different character, and it might be a mix of perspectives.
Sure.
So I love putting together kind of little mixtapes for
Fascinating.
Characters and for stories. Because it's like, even if it's not necessarily I'm doing something exactly based on this song, it's what gets me into the mindset I need.
Yeah, this is the texture of it.
Yeah.
Sure.
So that's, I guess that's a good set of influences. A lot of the time, some of my ideas just come from walking down the street and seeing someone who looks interesting, and I'll go, okay, I'll jot that down.
Nice.
Maybe in one story I'll have a character who's wearing something similar to that.
Sure.
Or I'll be talking to someone and they'll mention something and I'll look into it and go, okay, I'm going to shamelessly rip this off.
Sure.
And I'll take it into my own thing.
Yeah.
It's like, I like getting inspiration from little bits and pieces. I'm trying to figure out how to base something on Plymouth without making it outright Plymouth.
Yeah.
Because I've grown up here. I've always known Plymouth. I love Plymouth. I want to stay here for as long as I can.
Sure.
But in terms of looking at things from a kind of seaside town perspective, I feel like sometimes I have things that, like, I have subconscious kind of influences that go in without me knowing.
Everyone does.
So there'll be certain places I've drawn that have elements that look like Plymouth because I've gone, oh, in my mind I've based it on a place.
Sure, yeah.
Or there's been characters that have accidentally been based on other characters or on myself that I've drawn it and someone says, that looks like you, and I've gone,
oh yeah,
it's not supposed to be.
Right, sure.
So it's I like kind of, I'm trying to get better at also kind of indulging the subconscious influence of things. So it's like, if I've gone, I want, like, in my mind, in my secret part of my mind, if I've gone, I want to add this thing because this feels right. If I notice it, or if someone else notices it, I'll try and, like, keep that going because that was very, more of an honest kind of response, I guess.
Okay.
So, yeah, I try to be kind of broad with inspirations in that kind of regard.
Sure. We're talking of inspiration. For my last question, if you could play Dungeons and Dragons with any 3 video game characters come to life, which would they be?
I think, unfortunately, my favourite video game characters would be the ones who would be terrible to play with.
Because they wouldn't be, like, playing nice and good collaborators?
They would either not play very nice, or they'd be very main character-y, or they would just not engage.
Just step forward of the ball and stomp on.
Yeah, they'd be too serious.
Right.
So it's like, I don't know, use Leon Kennedy as an example. I love Leon. He's awesome. Yeah. He's a very silly character.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of Resident Evil, and he's a cool guy.
Sure.
But I don't think he'd be a good person to play D&D with,
No.
because especially as the story goes on, he gets a lot more serious.
Yeah.
But he also has a lot of these kind of like cheesy one-liners and that sort of thing.
It would eventually get
so
irritating.
you'd literally be sat there going, please shut up, please shut up.
But also, he might have PTSD from all the shit he's been through.
Exactly, you can't go too much into anything, because then
and then they were in the dungeon, it was getting dark, and he'd be like, and just,
I gotta get out of here. Yeah, so I think weirdly enough, the people who would be most open to play Dungeons and Dragons and have a good time with it would be characters from Fallout. Because, I mean, there's like, they probably want an escape from their reality.
Yeah. They're probably playing things like Scrabble anyway.
Yeah, there's a few characters I can think of from Fallout 4 especially, who are a bit more on the playful side and would engage. So you have Deacon, and his whole thing is that he's like kind of a secret spy, but he's also slightly meta, and he's kind of aware of the situation he's in from a kind of outside perspective.
Right.
But he's also quite playful, and he likes playing different roles, whether that's as a joke, deliberately to stand out, or to fit in somewhere.
Sure.
So he'd get very into character. I feel like he'd be pretty fun. You also have McCready, who's one of my favourite characters. His whole thing is he's actually like he's a reoccurring character from an earlier game, but he's quite sad. He's got a lot of kind of like traumatic backstory stuff, but he's also kind of a child at heart, because he's still quite young, but he's been through quite a lot.
Sure.
So
be a good escape for him.
Yeah, so he's a character who collects comics and tries not to swear too much.
Okay.
And does this and that. So I feel like he'd probably be resistant at first, like, I don't want to play a silly game, and then would actually get really into it.
Be or in future the person saying, when we're going to play it again.
Or you'd find out he'd played it since he was a kid, that kind of thing.
Sure. Any Nintendo characters? Like, I don't know, Kirby, Mario?
Oh, Kirby would be
fun,
Kirby
assume.
would eat the board.
Yeah, you're right.
I think in terms of Nintendo characters...
Zelda, you're a big fan, aren't you?
Yeah. I feel like...
Who from that roster would work?
You couldn't play with Link because he does not speak.
Yeah,
Zelda would be... I feel like Zelda would work well as a dungeon master, because she's, depending on which version of her it is, if we'll go for the most recent one as an example, she's very focused, she's very dedicated, she's on track, she's able to kind of like keep things going and act as a leader.
Sure.
But I think sometimes it'd be the kind of thing where you'd need to kind of be supportive to keep her going, because she has this whole
cheer her on.
Yeah, she'd have this. She has in the game. She has this whole arc of going like, I'm not. I'm a failure. I'm not born right. I don't have the goddess powers. You're just going to need to go like, no, it's fine. We understood that you meant someone else's name.
Sure. Give her a mug of tea.
Yeah. So I think that'd be a good mix. If I had to go for like an absolutely crazy
wild card?
Yeah, absolute wild card, Wario. Because
Wario,
yes,
nice.
he would be terrible to play with, but in the best way.
It'd be fun.
He would deliberately. He'd be one of those people who is very kind of like the kind of stereotypical murder hobo.
It's animalistic.
He goes around killing everyone, taking all the loot.
Yeah,
but he'd also be extremely fun when it gets to the point of going, okay, right, you know what? We're all just going to fight each other over this loot.
Sure.
He would be fun to fight against. I think he'd be kind of an ass, but he'd be fun.
If you kept it to like a window of like an hour session at a time, then maybe you could contain his madness enough.
It would be the most, in general, this whole group would be the most exhausting D&D game I've ever been
so
part of.
keep it short.
But it'd be fun. I don't know, I always take it from the like more kind of roleplay aspect of it.
Yeah, I get you.
I'd be decent at like going, the only reason anyone's acting like this is because their characters are acting like this.
Right.
And then afterwards like screaming into a pillow or something. But yeah, fun stuff.
Well, great. Thank you, Kitty. Good to talk to you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for listening. And a hearty thank you to our Night of the Round patrons, Burn the Decks and Even Stevens, for supporting the legs of the table. Please like, subscribe, share, comment, rate, all that good business. And stay tuned for more fantastic interviews with brilliant guests. There's a seat waiting for you.